like custom columns, conditional columns kind of options where we have. So as I planned in my throughout this particular discussion on Power BI, as per my plan, what I have decided that I'll be sharing you some concepts of Power Query Editor every day on every session of Power BI, where I'll be discussing something new about the Power Query Editor. And after that, I'll continue with my discussion on the DAX concept. So in today's topic, I'll be talking about the number function, number options for data transformation that is available in Power Query Editor, and after that I will talk about the date transformation, so the date options that we have in Power Query Editor for data transformation. Now Power Query Editor is a self-service ETL tool, and we have a lot of options that we use from the Power Query Editor to transform the data, to structure the data. Now what I will do on each of my Power BI session, I will be spending some time in discussing some of the options in Power Query Editor in detail. So today I'll be talking about the number transformation. Now before I take on a hands-on example, let me first open my Power Query Editor. So this is the opening screen of the Power BI desktop application. Under the home menu, we'll click on transform data and we'll select this particular transform data option, which will redirect us to the Power Query Editor window. Now over this particular window, we have the home, transform and the add column option. Now, I was discussing about the text column which is there in the transform and from text option from the add column in my previous discussions. Yesterday I discussed about the add column section where I showed you how we can work with a column from the examples and conditional column, and before that I also worked with custom column. Today I'll be focusing on discussing the next segment of inbuilt functions in Power Query Editor, and that is number column. From the transform and the add column section, I'll be using the from number. So from number from add column and number column from the transform menu. These are the two important topics that I'm going to take up today. For this, first let me connect to a particular data set. So what I can do, I can go and let's select a sample data. So what I can select a number transformation. So this particular file. So these are all very random data that I'm taking, guys. There's no proper sample or a structure for this particular data. You can easily create this kind of data to explore the Power Query Editor options. So I have selected these two data. So this particular Excel file has two worksheets. The first is numbers and the second is the data. Now first let me click on this transform data and let us see how we can use this particular sample data in the Power Query Editor sections. So today's focus will be on the number transformation. Now let me do a bit of so you can see that this particular file, the columns head are not updated. So what I can do, I can quickly use the option as the use first row as headers, and let me update the column headers over here. So column headers are updated, and if there is some errors over here, you can see this particular column is showing me some errors. So I can see there's an error over here. So let me remove these errors quickly. So I'll go select this particular column and let me remove the errors. And also there's some null rows at the end. So I'll just quickly select the remove bottom rows and I'll select 2 over here, and I'm done. So I quickly transform this error before I start my discussion on the number format. Now the number format is taken care by the sections like transform and add column menu. And the transform menu will use this number column option, under which we have the statistics, standard, scientific, trigonometry, rounding and information. and under add column the same options are available under the option called from number. under which we have the same options that we can see on the transform, like statistics, standard, scientific, trigonometry, rounding, and information. Now, in the very first discussion on Power Query Editor, I highlighted the fact that the transform and add column has its own responsibility to play. The transform column changes the column from state A to state B, but add column will change the column in such a way that as a result of using the add column option, we will always be having a new physical column added to the existing dataset on which we are working. Now, this is a very important thing that you need to take care of, because we have to be very specific about the business scenarios on which we have to apply either add column or you have to go for a transform column option. Now, coming back to the example, so today as we are going to talk about the number transformation before we start working with the DAX concept. So I'll take these two columns. So we have a quantity and the amount column. Now, the first thing that I want to show you is of the transform column. So you can see I've selected the amount column from this particular data set. Now, there is a feature that I want to highlight about transform and add column in terms of number transformation. When we select a single column, you can see all the options under number column in transformation menu is enabled. But the moment I select multiple column, for example, if I select another column by holding down my control key, you can see the statistics and the standard options has been grayed out. They are disabled. But in add column, they are enabled. But when I select a single column, in the add column, the statistics option is not there, it's grayed out. So the conclusion for this particular example was to show you that whenever you're using a multiple column, then it's best that you work with the add column option. But whenever you're working with a single column, then best is using the transform column option. Now, starting with the transform option, we can see under the number column we have statistics, standard, scientific. Now let us explore these options over here. Now, statistics, if you click on this particular drop down, we have a certain aggregate functions like maximum, minimum, sum, median, average. So these are all our list functions which we use. If we use in this particular column, it will return us a single value. For example, if I select the amount column and go to my statistics option over here, and if I select the sum, it will return me a single value as output of this particular sum operation that I've selected. The same thing if I go back and again if I select the column, and if I select the sum from the transform menu, and this time if I select average, I will get a unique value, a single value as a result of this particular operation. Similarly, you can explore the other options under the statistics option, because these are all self-explanatory options that we have, like maximum, minimum, count values, count distinct values. Now, what if I select the next option, the standard options, we can also see there are certain options like the mathematical operations like add, multiply, subtract, divide. Now, what if I select multiply? So you can see there is a pop-up menu coming up asking for the value to which you want to multiply all the values in this column. Now, suppose if I select 100 and if I click OK, see, all the values over here has been multiplied by 100. Similarly, if I go over here, select this column and click on standard, and this time if I click on divide, the same option I will get. And if I divide it, all the values will be divided by 100. Now, the purpose of showing you this particular example was to tell the fact that all these particular option that we're using are actually being transforming the column. We are not able to add, we are not adding any physical column to this particular data set. It's just like the transforming the values that this particular column contains. And that is the difference between transform and add column. Now, similarly, let us see the scientific options, the options that we have under the scientific menu. Now, these particular options we generally use in terms of doing certain kind of data research. So, I'll be trying to discuss a case study on this on my upcoming sessions. So, these particular options is bestly suited for when you're trying to find some anomalies or some kind of outliers in our data, kind of research that you're doing in our data. Same goes with the trigonometry also. So I'll be trying to use these options in one of my upcoming sessions on a case study, where I'll try to show you something where I could be using these options. The next is a rounding option. The rounding option, as you can see, it's a roundup value. It's a roundup option that we apply in our data. For example, if I round up, if I use this roundup value, it will be rounded up to the next maximum value of the decimal. For example, if I select this particular column, if I select roundup, so you can see the values has been rounded up to the next maximum value. If I undo this particular, and if I use the round down, so you can see 29.55 is rounded down to 29. The same number, when I use the roundup value, was rounded up to the next maximum value of 30. So this is the way we can use the round up and round down. And the same way, if we use a round value, then the Power Query editor will ask us to specify the number of decimal places that we want to round up this particular value in a column. So if I give it to 0, then as per my specified number, it will be rounded up or rounded down. So this is how we can use this rounding value from the transform, and everything is getting rounded in the same column. We are not adding any physical data to this particular data set. The next option is information. Now if you click on this particular option, we have 3 items in this particular drop down: is even, is odd, or sign. Now if I select is even, all the even numbers, if there are any even numbers in this column, will return a true, or if there is an odd number, it will return a false. For example, if I click on even, you can see there's only one true over here, a few true and some false over here. That means some numbers are even and the others are false. And if there's any error, it will throw a null value. It's the same thing if I apply for information. Under odd, it will give me the same true and false. You can see true or false value for this particular column. Now the next is sign. A sign is an option which tells you if the number is negative or positive. It's 1 for positive numbers and -1 for negative. So if I select sign, see, this particular column is showing us all 1 numerical value. That means all the values in this particular column is a positive value. So we can again undo this particular step. So this is the number option that is available in the transform menu. Now the same thing, if I go in the add column, and this time let me give you a different example. So I will select this particular table which contains the data in terms of a product, the region wise data, and we can see that in each column of the region wise there is a null value. Now as I said, if we use a single column, the statistics menu in the add column option will be disabled, because add column always works with multiple columns. Now for example, if I select all the columns from here, holding down my control key, and if I go to the statistics option under add column, and if I click on sum, you can see there's a new column that has been added as a result of the sum operation. The same thing, I can go and I can select the minimum value. You can see the minimum value column contains the minimum value for each of the rows. So this is how we can apply a statistics option in add column. The next is standard option. Now this particular option actually is it's a slightly tricky option. Why tricky? Because under standard option, if we use, suppose I am using two columns over here, and I select a value from the standard option. For example, I select an add value. You can see that the add value is returning me null output in some of the rows. So how can we avoid this kind of situation? How can we avoid the null value in this kind of situation? We can avoid it by using a third column. For example, let me delete this particular column and let me select 3 columns in this. And this time if I select the add option from the standard menu, you can see I'm not getting a null value, which I was getting in place in terms when I was using 2 columns. Now what if your data has only 2 columns? How can you get the third column to avoid a null output? That can be solved with the help of one more option. Let me show you that. So what I can do a right click, I click on remove, and suppose your data have only this 2 column and you want to apply the standard option over here, which is not possible in terms of 2 columns. It needs 3 columns at least, and your data have only 2 columns. In that case, in the add column option, you have an option called custom column. Click on this custom column and create a column with a value 1. And now if you can see, you can use these 3 columns, and you can use an add option from the standard menu and will not get any null values as an output. You can also choose to remove this custom column from this particular aim code, and you can use it as a normal addition feature. So this is how we can use the standard option under the add column for more than 2 columns if you want to perform any kind of calculations. And the rest of the options, that is scientific and trigonometry or round up and round down, these are all same options just like we have seen in transform menu. And we can use the same way, but the only difference is that in this case, instead of the output will be created in a different column, which will be added as a physical column, as a new physical column to your existing data set. Now we can choose to remove these columns. So this is the number inbuilt function that we can use under the Power Query editor. First, we have seen the text. So where I have discussed about the different types of text transformation, like uppercase, lowercase, format, extract, these kind of options. Next, I discussed about the number transformation, where I discussed about the number transformation that can be taken care of in the transform and add column menu. The third is date. Now date, as I always say in my DAX discussion also, date holds a very important place in your report. It actually adds that time intelligence component in your data. Now let us see how we can use the date transformation that is available in Power Query editor. And then I'll be talking about the next topic that we were working yesterday on a project where I was working on the DAX concept. Now, talking about the date. Now, there are a lot of things that we can perform in date. What I can do, I can use this particular table, the data table, and I can do a right click, and I can remove the other column, keeping this particular date column. Now you can see I am only left with the date column. Now if I'm talking just like numbers, as in case of numbers, we were having the number column in the transform menu and the from number option under the add column. Same thing we have in terms of date. So we have a date and time column option on the transform, and we have a date and time option under add column. And by now I am sure you know that what add column and transform does. What I will be doing this time, I'll be selecting the add column option, and if I select the add column option, you can see that I have the date option. I can select the options available over here. So I can select the start of the year option. So I've got the start of the year option. Now I can again go over here and I can select two columns, and from this date option I've got subtract days. Now if I click on the subtract days option, the present date will be subtracted from the start of the year option and we'll get these values over here. So this is the difference in terms of days. So this particular day column has been subtracted from the start of year column. And again, if I select this date option, I can get more options over here. Now what if I want to use the duration option over here? For using this particular option, what we can do, we can change the data type of this particular column. And how can I do that? For that, you can select this particular column, go to transform, and under the data type you can see we can select change this particular option, or you can click on this particular data type icon and you can select the duration option. Now the moment I select duration option, you can see there's a time element. The days has been converted into duration. And this time if I come to add column, you can see the duration option is highlighted. And I can convert this particular duration option into total number of hours. If I click on total hours, you can see it has been converted into total hours. For each day has been converted into total hours. I can further go and select other options like total minutes. I can also use some other like days option. So these are the days. You remember the initial, the column was like this in terms of days. So we can use the date and time inbuilt functions in the Power Query editor to convert or to transform an existing data, and a result of which we can get a exactly new table, which we can use as a normal table in our day-to-day reporting. So this was the discussion that I wanted to do in terms of the Power Query editor, where I have discussed about the number transformation, text transformation, and date transformation. Now I will request all of you guys to please explore this particular area where you can just use all the available options in the Power Query editor. And believe me guys, you don't have to write any code or any formula for this. You just need to select the available options in the menu, and you have to select the correct options to convert your data, to transform your data. Now let's get back to our next topic, that is the discussion on DAX. So let me close this particular window. And let me open the project file that we were working with. So we were working on this particular project of a import export company. So on this particular project we have developed, we have created the model which consists of the fact and dimension table. We have seen the different approaches that we can follow to create a date table through Power Query Editor, through DAX functions, and through Advanced Editor. So you have three ideas, three important approach in terms of creating a date table. Now, we also know how to create a measure table. So yesterday I discussed how to create a measure table where we have worked with four important measures, and I concluded my session on the creating this particular report where I showed you the total sales, the total cost, the total profit, and the profit percent. Now today I will start my discussion on DAX with a very important concept as how we can format the DAX measures, the calculated measures. So we have created a number of calculated measures. Now let me select this particular visual and let me expand this a bit, and let me bring one more measure over here, that is profit percent. Now the question is, I have created this particular four important measures in front of you guys, but a very important aspect that we were missing over here is, if I send this particular report to any end user, the particular user will fail to understand what currency the report is actually carrying, the values are in which currency, and second, the percentage, the profit percentage column is actually not showing the percentage, it's showing the values in terms of decimal. Now let us format these measures that we have created. And how to format a measure? We'll select the particular measure, and you can see the moment I select the measure under this table, we have got options like table tools and measure tools. Now under measure tools, the requirement is I have to add a currency symbol to each of the values in terms of sales, cost, and profit, and also I have to add a percentage symbol for this particular column. So let's start first assigning a currency to the values over here. So I've selected the total sales. I'll go to the measure tools, and under this measure tools we have a formatting section, you can see over here, which consists of dollars, percentage, which consists of some decimal points and some formatting decimal places. Now what I can do, we can select this particular dollar sign and you can select the available currency symbol from here. So we have a huge collection of currency symbol from the different countries in terms of the currency they carry. So I'll be selecting this particular dollar symbol as of now. You can also get an Indian rupee symbol over here. You have to search it down and it's available in the down menu. Now you can see the moment I selected a dollar symbol, this particular column, the sales, total sales column has been updated with the dollar sign. The same thing I'll do for profit. And you can see as I add a dollar symbol to the profit, actually the decimal values has been increased. So what I can do, I can click on this particular auto option and I can keep the decimal symbol to 2 places. The same thing I can do for the total cost, and I can increase the decimal places to 2 for this. And the most easiest way to find the number of transactions is to find the number, to count the number of rows that are there in the sales report. So I will use a formula called count rows. And this particular formula will count the number of rows in a table. I'll select this particular formula with my tab, and this particular formula takes a table as an argument. Over here the table will be a sales table, so I will mention that particular table. I'll close the bracket and I'll press enter, and I've got a measure with total transaction. Now what I can do, I can test this particular measure. So I'll take a card visual from my visualization pen. I will resize this card visual, and I'll be dragging this particular total transactions over here. So there were 11,000 transactions that has taken place in this particular sales report. And let me format it. Let me add a border and let me keep it aside. The next set of formula that I'm going to write is a very important formula that contains the time intelligence concept of the report. So what I can do, I can click on this particular home menu, click on enter data, and let me create a new table, the major table, and the name of the table is cumulative calculations. So let me name this table as cumulative calculations, and I click on load. And I'll be performing two calculations over here. The first is a YTD and the second is the MTD. Now I have created a cumulative calculation table. I do a right click on this particular table and I click on new measure, and I'll be finding the year till date sales. So year till date sales, how can I find? So I will type YTD sales. And the formula for this will be a very simple formula, that is an inbuilt formula we have in DAX family, that is total YTD. You can see the total YTD I have selected, which evaluates the specific expressions over the interval, which begins on the first day of the year and ends with the last day of the year. Now I'll select this particular YTD sales. Now what is an YTD sales? A YTD sales is that sales which is calculated. It can be done in the terms of day or it can be done in the terms of month. So where, for example, if you want to know the YTD sales for the month of Jan, then for the first day of the sales plus second day of the sales will be the first YTD sales. The first day plus second day plus third day, the total of these 3 days will be the second YTD sales. So these are the YTD sales, the year till date sales or the cumulative sales you can say. So what I can do, I'll be using the YTD sales, total YTD, which takes 3 arguments. Some are optional and some are compulsory. So in the expression field, I'll be writing the total sales and as YTD sale is related to the date, it contains a time component. So we'll be using the date column from the date table. So we have a date table with us, right? And we'll explain that. We'll take the date column from that particular table. We can close it and we can press enter. And here we go with the first YTD sales. So what I can do, now that I've created a table, cumulative calculation table, measure table, let me remove the blank column from here and let me delete this particular table column from here. And let me collapse this particular section and I can expand it, and we have got the second major table with a one major under it, that is YTD sales. So what we can do, we can take a new page, and this time let me implement this particular major. So what I will do, I will take a text table, or what else I can do, let me use that particular page only, so it can be like a dashboard for you. So it will be a good way to understand how dashboard is also created in the same time. So let me name this particular page. I'll do a right click and I'll rename this particular page as sales report. And this particular sales report till now consists of a text table and a card. So let me format this table quickly. So let me add a border and a shadow. So it gives a good look to this good interactivity to this particular table. And for YTD sales, what I can do, I can select a different table, text table, and let me resize this particular table over here. And I can bring the customer's name over here. I can bring the total sales from the important major tables, and I can bring the YTD sales from the cumulative calculation table. Now you might be wondering that why the cumulative sale is lesser than why the YTD sales is less than the total sales. It should be the same value at the end of the day, because this particular data consists of 2 years of data, and it's calculating, this particular calculation is for the year 2020. So we can avoid this, so we can just click on this particular option. Or what you can do, you can remove this customer name and you can bring the date column from the date table. And let me remove the hierarchy from the date. And this will be the best thing to understand the YTD sales. Now if you can see, okay, let me format the date also. So I'll select the date from the date table. Under the column tool option, I will select the date format. And you can see the YTD sales, the 1st of Jan, it was 4.1, which is same as the first day. But for the 2nd of Jan, the cumulative sale, the YTD sale is the addition of first day and the second day. Similarly, the third sales is the addition of first, second and third day of January. Similarly, we are going in the same way. Now this particular total is coming low because in 2020 there is a separate calculation that is being done over here. So from 2020, this is the 2020 sales. So from here it's actually calculating. That's why we are getting a less total over here. So it's a year specific total that is happening. Now the question is, if this particular total sales is year specific, how we can calculate the year wise sales? So what we can do, let's calculate the two sales differently for the year 2019 and for the year 2020. So let's calculate the 2020 sales first. So for this, what I will do, I'll do a right click on this particular table again, and I'll select new measure. And let me name this particular measure as 2020 sales. And for this particular measure, I'll be using some new functions like calculate and filters. So what we'll be calculating over here? We'll be calculating the total sales. So we'll use a calculate function. What does calculate function do? It evaluates the expression in a context modified by filters. Now in simple language, so these definitions may be sounding very technical to you guys, but let me make it very simple for you. Calculate actually controls the logic that we define within the particular function. A calculate may tell you to calculate the total sales. A calculate may tell you to filter a certain column. So calculate actually controls the other clause that we use within that particular function. So over here, what do we need to calculate? We need to calculate the total sales, which we have already calculated, but that total sales will be calculated on the basis of the date, on the basis of the year, and that particular year is 2020. So let me check first, before I write this particular formula, let me check if my date column has a year column or not, if date table has a year column or not. So that is the best way to, before I write this particular function. So I have to check over here, and let me go to my date table in the data view, and let me open this particular date table. And I think we have a year column over here. Yes, so we have a year column over here. That's good. So let's get back to the view report, and let me do a right click on the cumulative calculation table, click on the new measure, and let me select the sales for the 2020 years. So let me write 2020 sales is equal to calculate total sales, and that on the basis of the year which is available in the date table. So we have to filter the date table. So we'll use a comma, and I'll be using a filter to filter the date table. So we have a date table. Yeah, so let's make it an integer number. Instead of text, we can keep it as an integer, and we can click on close and apply. Now we have converted this column from a text to an integer, and now if I use this particular formula, let me check if this formula is working right now, because I fixed the error over here. And let me bring this particular customer names, and let me bring the sales over here, and let's see if it's working or not. Yes, we are done. What we did, I converted this particular data type from a text to a integer, and the moment I did that, this particular formula worked. So this particular report is only showing us the sales for 2020, and you can see this particular number 354,29165 is same as 354,29164. As I was telling you that this particular total is actually taking the sales for the year 2020, so I have separated the 2020 sales over here. Now let me quickly format this particular measure. I'll select this particular measure. I can use a dollar, and I can keep the decimal places to 2, and we fixed it. Similarly, let me calculate the 2019 sales. So I'll copy this particular formula. I'll do a right click over here, click on new measure, and I'll paste this particular over here, and I'll just change the year from 2020 to 2019. I'll press enter. Okay, I have to change the measure name also, so 2019 sales. And similarly, I can bring this particular sales in 2019. let me take a new page. Let me take a new text table. What I can do, I can bring the customer name. I can bring the 2019 sales and the 2020 sales. It's not coming. So the 2019, and now I can bring the 2020. I can format the 2019 major. Similarly, just the way I've done the 2020. So I can press set all the decimal values and set the major. So you can see that how I have calculated the 2019 and 2020 cells separately. Now let's see how we can arrange this particular new table in a data model. So let me go back to my data model, and this time we have one more new major table. So we can bring that table and we can keep it over here. So you can see slowly we are arranging this particular data model in a way that anybody who comes to this particular model, he can easily understand that which are dimensions, what are the fact tables and what are the major tables, and which are the major tables actually contains which kind of formula. So the important major table contains these are the major values, these are the major formulas. The cumulative calculation table contains this kind of formulas. Similarly, the next type of formula that I am going to work with is a time intelligence formula. So I will be comparing some sales in terms of last year and present year. Now this particular segment of discussion, I will be showing you implementation of certain old DAX formula and how those DAX formula has evolved over the period of time by the inclusion of certain new DAX concept. So let me create a new table for this, and I'll click on this particular enter data option again, and let me create a new table for my model. So this time I'll name this particular is a time intelligence. And I click on load. And I've got a new table this time. It's a time intelligence table. Now I right click on this, and this time the first measure that I'm going to create under this particular table is how to calculate the sales for the last year. So I'll be using a name as sales last year, and I'll again using the calculate functions. We'll calculate the total sales and this time to calculate the sales last year, what I will be using, I'll be using the same period last year formula. Now this same period last year returns the date in the current selection from the previous year. So the current selection means the date table, the date column from the date table. So I'll select this particular formula, and as this particular formula is related to the time component where we need to specify the date so that it can extract the last year's date from that particular date column. So what we will be doing, we will select the date table and I'll be mentioning the date column from there. I'll close the bracket and I'll press enter. So I've got my first formula over here, the sales last year. So let me remove this blank column from here, the column 1. And what I can do, I can again use the same concept. And let me collapse and expand this, and I've got a new measure table. Now if I come to my data model, I've got a third measure table. Let me bring it over here at the down. And let me test this particular measure. So what I can do, I can go back to my view report and let me select a text table. Let me bring the date column from here. And let me bring the sales 2020 and the same period last year sales from this particular time intelligence table. Now you can see, if we compare, for 2020 the last year sale was 414529. And how we can verify this? If I come to my sales report over here, you can see for 2019 it was 414529, which is the last year sales for 3238450. So we can see the last year sales we can compare in terms of the current year is 2020, and the last year sales for each of the date is easily populated over here. And we can see that the last year sales was more in compared to this year's sales. But in 2020 we can only compare till 5th of June because the sales has been recorded till that particular date. Now the question is, this particular same period last year formula is allowing us to calculate the sales in terms of last year. Now what if I want to calculate the sales for last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? How we can make this particular formula dynamic enough to calculate the n number of years, n number of last years? Or may I tell you, what if I want to calculate the sales in terms of month, quarter, week? How we can make this particular formula more and more dynamic? Because same period last year will only return the sales in terms of last year. For that, let me show you one very powerful formula that is there in DAX, that is date add. Now I will write the same formula using the date add function. Now let me do a right click on the time intelligence table, calculation table over here, and I select a new measure, and let me name that particular measure is sales last year, and I'll use the calculate function to calculate the total sales. And instead of same period last year, I'll be using a new formula. So this formula was included into the DAX family a few months ago. It's a date add. It's a very it's one of my favorite formula, and it's a very powerful formula in DAX actually. It allows you to add more and more specific and flexible report or findings to your report with the help of this particular date add formula. So date add actually moves the given set of dates by a specified interval. So specified interval means we can specify the interval over here. How? Let us see. So we'll be adding this particular to the date column of the date table. So let me take the date column, and it takes 3 intervals: date, number of intervals, and interval. So we have declared the date over here. The number of interval over here, it will be -1 because we are calculating last year sales. Now if it is for last year, last 2 years, it will be -2. And this is where the flexibility comes to this particular formula. In same period last year, we cannot add anything like that. We can add, but it will make it more and more complicated. But this particular formula date add will add more flexibility to your formula. So let me specify the interval as -1. Now here is the more information that we can add to this formula. So we can calculate the sales not only in terms of year that was there in the last formula, but also in terms of quarter, month and day. So let me select the scenario over here. The requirement is to calculate the sales in terms of year. So I'll select it, close the bracket, and again close one more bracket, press enter. Now let me use the same formula into my report. So what I can do, I can select this particular table and I can bring the sales last year with the date add option, and you will see that it gives me the same thing that was given by the sales last year formula, the same period last year function. Now this is how we can, so this date add function is a very dynamic function. It actually helps you to break your formula. It helps you to calculate to arrange your calculation in terms of the number of intervals you want. It also allows you to define the intervals in terms of year, month, quarter, day. Now let us visualize this particular sales in terms of a different visual. So what I can do, let me take a new shade. So let me make it to 220 sales. And let me take a new shade and let me rename it as compare sales. Now I can take a area chart over here, and what I can do, I can bring the sales, I can bring the total sales over here. Customers, sorry, I cannot bring the over here. So I can bring the customers over here, or let me bring the countries or state in the axis. And what I can do, I can bring the 2020 sales into the value, and I can bring the sales last year on a secondary value, and you can see that we can compare this particular value in terms of 2020 and 2019 sales in terms of the country. Now you can see the blue is 2020 and this particular. So let us make this color more interactive. So what I can do, I can go to data color, and instead of select a yellow and a gray option over here, and you can make this particular chart more and more interactive. So you can see that I am comparing the sales. So I have been using these particular measures in the same way that I am using in a visual, in the same way that where I am using these particular measures in a text table. Now text table is a very useful visual in terms of doing quantitative analysis. So you can use this particular measures over here in a text table. The next measure that I am going to work is on a profit last year. So I will do a right click over here and click on new measure, and let me type the profit last year. And what we can do, we can calculate the total profit. So we have the total profit measure with us, total profit, comma, and I'll be using the date add function again, and I'll be using that particular date add function on the date table, on the date column. I'll define the interval and I'll define the year. I'll close it and I'll press enter. So I've got the profit last year. Now let us calculate the profit 2020 and then we can compare it. So we have this cumulative calculation table. Now you can see that for each type of measure I am using a different type of measure table. I am not creating the profit 2020 under time intelligence. I am creating it under cumulative calculations. So this is the purpose. This is what I want to share with you guys, the best practices that you can follow while working with a DAX formula. You can create tables, measure tables, and you can list those tables in your model. You can arrange those tables like this in your model. So I can do a right click and I click on this particular option, and what I can do, I can select this particular formula 2020 sales. I can do a right click over here, click on cumulative calculations. I'll press this particular and let's change the formula. So 2020 profit where I will be calculating the total profit in terms of 2020. Now what I can do, let me select one more area chart and let me bring the product this time in the axis, and let me bring the (2020) profit on the value and the profit last year from the time intelligence table into the secondary value. So you can see I have the profit plotted in terms of the product where I have earned the profit, what profit I have earned in 2020 and the profit last year. Now what I can do, let me change this particular color and let me arrange the change the color for those two products. So I can go to the data colors and let me select the colors for here. So what I can do, I can go for a gray and I can go for a black. How does black suits? Yes, so we have a dark gray and a black combination color. So I'll talk about the themes that we can use over our visuals in my upcoming discussions. So theme is a very important thing. You can get the themes over here under the view. So you can use the themes as per the defined template, as per the dashboard compliance that is defined by the organization. So this is how we can see. Now you can see that we have created at least over here we have 4. So we have created 12 DAX formulas and we have converted those formulas into visuals and reports. So this is how we can use the measures to find out those information from our report which is not available over here. Like the profit 2020 was not there. The profit last year was not there. Sales last year was not there. We can see how we have created the measure tables in our report. So this is how we can work on the DAX concept. There are more than 1200 DAX formulas that we can explore. So I'm just trying to show you some of the formulas that we can use as per the present scenario, which is helping us to find those information which is not there. So that was all for today's session. So I hope the agenda which I planned for today's was able to explain it properly. However, I will request all the learners to please explore these areas. You can just refer to this video and you can just know how the DAX formula is can be used in order to explore, in order to make a report more and more dynamic. Please don't forget to join my next session at 8 o'clock for Tableau. So today I'm going to talk about some new topics in Tableau Desktop, and we'll see how we can mix, blend our data, and to make a report out of blending and mixing the data. I'll also talk about very important concept of level of details in Tableau. So that was all for today's session. So please explore this particular topics that I have discussed. So stay safe and keep learning.